Hi, class. We're starting Chapter 9, The Revolutionary War. We're going to start with a story. In 1776, Samuel Francais, an African-American tavern owner in New York City, heard a rumor about a plan to kill General George Washington. To protect the general, Francais asked his daughter, Phoebe, to act as Washington's housekeeper. She was helped by a boy named Pompey. While she went about her work, Phoebe was to watch, listen, and guard the general from someone named T. Read how Phoebe's bravery and quick thinking saved George Washington. Phoebe the Spy by Judith Barry Griffin. "I've come for my peas," he said softly. "Oh, Mr. Hickey, sir," she said. "You gave me such a start. I was—" She stopped and looked at him, even more startled. He looked ill, frightened. She couldn't tell which. "Which is my plate and which is General Washington's?" he said. "It wouldn't do for him to have more than me." He spoke quickly, without smiling this time. "I've never heard of such carryings on over a pile of peas," Phoebe said. "This is the general's plate, and this is yours." She turned away to fill Pompey's salt cellar, and turned back just in time to see Hickey's hand move quickly away from General Washington's plate and slide into his pocket. Something winked for a second in the light, something shiny like glass. "What are you doing to General Washington's plate?" she said. "I told you yours is here." She picked up the plate. Was it her imagination, or was there something grainy, like sugar, on the peas? Phoebe looked more closely, but as she looked, whatever it was seemed to have disappeared. An instant later she wasn't sure. Had she seen anything at all? She thought of the window again, and forgot about the peas. She had to serve General Washington. Leaving Hickey standing in the kitchen, Phoebe nervously entered the dining room, Pompey following with the salt. As she walked toward the general, Phoebe looked at every face around the table. Some of the guests were talking, some merely smiling. None seemed nervous or frightened. And then she noticed the empty chair. Who was missing? But even as she asked herself the question, she knew it was Mr. Green. Was he outside the house with a gun, waiting? General Washington was sitting by the window, as she had feared. He sat back easily in his chair, listening to something General Gates was saying. The window was open. As she went past, Phoebe looked outside anxiously. There was not a sound, not a shadow, not a movement. The green grass was smooth and unruffled. Even the leaves in the trees beyond were still. "Well, Phoebe!" General Washington exclaimed as she stopped beside his chair. "June peas! How did you get them so early in the season?" "It wasn't me, sir," replied Phoebe, looking past him out the window. "It was your Mr. Hickey. Brought them in fresh today. He says they're your favorite." "And mine as well," said General Gates. "Where is Mr. Thomas Hickey? I want to thank him." Phoebe started to put the plate down in front of General Washington. Then, in a flash, it came to her who she was looking for. Mr. Green was not hiding outside the window to shoot at the general. The person who was trying to kill him was here, in the kitchen. Phoebe stood like a stone, the plate still in her hands. She saw Hickey again, Thomas Hickey, laughing and teasing, bringing her candy and ribbons and seeds for her chickens, and then bringing June peas for the general, and sprinkling them with poison. Tea was for Thomas, member of General Washington's bodyguard. Still holding the plate, she whirled around. Pompey was waiting behind her. "Run!" she screamed. "Run! Get my father!" Everyone stopped talking. Pompey looked at her in amazement. Your father?" he stammered. Everyone in the dining room sat frozen. All eyes were on Phoebe. "General Washington!" she cried. "Mr. Hickey has put poison in your dinner. I saw him." There was a gasp from the table. "What jest is this?" Jest means a joke. "What jest is this?" roared General Gates, getting up from his place and reaching for the plate. But before he could take it from her, Phoebe ran to the open window and threw the whole plate out into the yard. Samuel and Phoebe Francis were free African Americans. Samuel owned the Queen's Head Tavern in New York City. The tavern, which still exists today, is located on Broad and Pearl Streets. It looks very much the way it did when Phoebe and her father lived there. So who did Phoebe think was trying to harm General Washington? Who was actually trying to harm General Washington, and how? Imagine you were a spy in charge of protecting General Washington. Write a journal entry describing how you saved Washington's life. Lesson 1. Americans and the Revolution. What to know. How did the American Revolution affect people's lives? Describe the personal and economic impacts of the war. Explain the role of women during the war. Identify the roles of African Americans and American Indians during the war. Key vocabulary: patriot, patriot, loyalist, loyalist, neutral, neutral, inflation, inflation, profiteering, profiteering, and regiment, regiment. Be sure to check out Quizlet to practice those key ideas. You are there. It is 1777. Hundreds of British soldiers are marching past your house in New Jersey. The rattle of their swords makes you shiver as your mother pulls you and your little brother close. For 3 months, your father has been away fighting in the Continental Army. While he is gone, your mother has been running the family's printing business. Outside, the last of the British soldiers are passing. Their coats make a line of red across the street. "Don't worry," he whispered to your brother. "We'll beat them all. You'll see." Fast fact: when a British soldier was hit by a bullet, his bright red uniform kept nearby soldiers from knowing he was bleeding. This helped prevent the other soldiers from getting scared and running away from the battle. Personal hardships. Economic hardships. Women and the war. African Americans, free and enslaved. People in the Western lands. Summary. During the Revolutionary War, Americans faced personal and economic hardships. Many women and African Americans contributed to the Patriot cause. At first, settlers in the western lands and American Indians were neutral, but later they joined the fighting. And a comprehension check when you're done. Number 1, how did the American Revolution affect people's lives? Number 2, and this is important, explain the difference between a loyalist, also called a Tory, and a patriot. Number 3, why did Congress have problems financing the war? Why did they have problems paying for the war? Number 4, why do you think many people are willing to face hardships during war? And we saw the word hardship over and over through the chapter. Hardship is something that's difficult. Number 5, what were the costs and the benefits of fighting in the war for American Indians? What did they gain? Would be the benefits. What did they lose? Would be the costs. And a challenge for my creative writers. Write a conversation between a patriot and a loyalist. Be sure each speaker supports his or her position with evidence. Okay, and you do not need to complete this, but it's good to think about it. And that is the end of Lesson 1, Chapter 9.